Margot is married to Tony, who is a very controlling husband in the 1950s, and she has an acquaintance, a handsome American man who has come back into her life. Right, this is my husband, Tony, and we've been married for some time, and he used to be a pro tennis player, and I was quite enamored with him in the old days. And then I met this beautiful, handsome, talented, charming writer from New York while he was in London last year, and he's come back to visit unexpectedly. So now I'm in this awkward predicament of introducing the two men in my life. I think that Margot admired Tony for his bedazzling character that he displays publicly, and I think they got married very quickly. So it was a very brief, exciting romance, and he definitely reeled her into this marriage because what he wanted was a woman from high society, which she is. I think she realizes that a life with Max, she would actually be loved and cherished, and that behind closed doors it would be a completely different experience for her to love and be loved, which is what she really wants. I think that's what people did in the 1950s, and she's a very upstanding, moral, she's a good girl. She's doing what her daddy would have told her to do.
It says in the play that he's around wealthy people all the time, and that he's acquired these high-end tastes, and he's looking for a wife in that milieu, and he finds Margot, who is already very attracted to him. She's attracted to him being a tennis star, and so he grabs the first chance he can get, is what he says. I think he's probably lower middle class. Yeah, he's really cut and dry, like really hard-nosed, knows what he wants, knows how to get it. He's almost street, but he's above that. I think one of his fatal flaws is that he lacks human compassion. He's very out for himself, and he's aware that he's out for himself, very aware, but he's not terribly self-aware in terms of his feelings and how to treat other people with love and respect. It's always him first. And one of the characters he meets, Lesgate, he sees him as pretty much the same kind of guy, and is right on his level. Well, I often play the guy next door, the nice guy, and Tony does too. He plays the nice guy all the time. He has normal conversations and interactions, but he's got all these machinations going on underneath all that. So he's really putting that on. And for me, the fun is being the snake underneath, the guy who's really planning all the time. And I can also do that. So the fun for me is the contrast between the nice guy, the genuine husband, and then as soon as he hangs up the phone, you see the real evil guy underneath.
Yeah, Max is an American from New York. He writes, he has ambitions to write novels, and he's probably written plays and novels never produced or published, as he says, but for now he writes for television in the States in the early 50s. So it's a burgeoning, it's a new field in a way. It's still very fresh. And I think he's successful at it. He does well at it, but he harbors more artistic ambitions underneath. I think he has a real moral core, and it was a joint decision between he and Margot a year prior not to continue, even though they were very much in love. And she, I think, made the decision to be the good girl and to stick by her man. And Max respects that, or tries to. Love is a very strong thing, though, and he comes back, the next year because I don't think he can do it. but I also don't think that Max has been married before. I think he's enjoyed a quasi-artistic life, a little bohemian maybe, and probably was okay, you know, going along to get along until he met somebody who he probably might even describe as a soulmate, and that knocks him for a loop. So it's a real conflict, trying to balance or trying to fight off these really strong feelings to be with someone he really genuinely loves, but to do the right thing. And of course, he doesn't know the true nature of her husband. It's her legs.
I thought so. I knew it.
Yeah.
Well, you like my legs too,
Love
right?
them.
Yeah.
See. So
Max and Tony are gam men.
Good question. He's but first of all, Lesgate may or may not be his real name. He's a grifter. He takes things and then he moves on. No, I don't think so. I don't think he was ever rising. To be honest, I think he came from modest beginnings and went to university and took things that he could because he learned that you can take a lot of things if you just smile while you're doing it and leave before anybody notices. And I think that's been his path. No, because he does have some compassion. I think Lesgate does have a modicum of, you know, he doesn't stab people in the night or kidnap children, or not that Tony does any of those things, but I'm not convinced he wouldn't. There is one thing in Lesgate's past that he does feel badly about, that involved someone getting hurt. So I think that makes him a slightly kindlier person than Tony. He's also not a mastermind of anything. It's small fry. He, you know, convinces people that he likes them, takes all their money and leaves. If there's a reporter or a police officer or like a milkman, I think there's a candy striper off stage that I'm playing as well. I'm all that stuff. Let's see. Yeah, the first one I think is there's an officer who answers the phone, and so far I'm leaning this way, but I think it's just because I keep forgetting he's supposed to be Scottish. So he answers the phone at the police station and says, "Hello, police." And then he hangs up the phone because he said, "Oh no, it's because there's been a burglary or something." And he says, "Yeah, well, no, take your name down," and takes the name. Things are a bit slow because we don't get a lot of burglaries, so it's and then right, we'll be right over, sir. And then he hangs up. There's someone who calls about taking. Oh no, that's Brenda. But I'm leaning that way. I think one of them is just going to answer the phone, and I'm going to just shout things from backstage sometimes every once in a while. I'm going to say, "It's your neighbour from upstairs, and I've run out of orange juice. Do you have any orange juice, Mr. Wendy's? I'm sorry, do you have company? I'll bring down a cake." Just so you know that I'm just going to work on some of that in. That's old Mrs. Lewis who lives upstairs. "There is a lump on the stair. Have you noticed? The fifth one up, there's a little bump. Been there for months. I don't know why."
We don't really know much about him as a person, really. We only see him doing his job, actually, and he seems to be very good at it. He's at the top of his profession. He's the chief inspector in charge of criminal investigation. So I think he's good at. I think he's got the best nose for sniffing out things that don't seem quite right. And I think this is definitely a case where his sergeant has done all the work, collected all the evidence, and has presented it, and he's kind of thought there's more to it than this. And it's also interesting that he also comes on knowing more than the characters on stage do. And so what he's constantly doing is trying to play them. I think he's a very good actor as well, because he doesn't want to let on, a poker player you might say, where he's got a set of cards and he knows what the other cards are to a certain extent, and he's just doing his job to try to draw people out to find out who could be lying. He knows somebody's holding something back. He's willing himself to kind of, you know, go the extra mile if he feels that justice can be served. it's a sense of justice. I think people like to see wrongs being righted. I think nobody wants to see bad guys get away with stuff. And especially really, really clever ones who think they're pretty damn smart.
It has everything. It's got a love story, it's got the crime, it's psychological.
It's a very human story. It's about human nature and what would any of us do faced in a situation that we've had absolutely no control over.
Tony has set up the perfect crime, and it goes wrong, and terribly wrong, and he suddenly has to change his plans. And so the fun for the audience is, when will this guy get caught? He's got to get caught, but he doesn't all the way through the play. It's a suspense of, oh wow, that guy's really, he's going to get away with it.
What makes the play compelling, certainly to me, is that it's a thriller. Things are fairly dangerous for almost everybody, almost all the time. And as has been said, like, the fun for the audience is, who's going to get it? Is he? It's my mom watching the play.